"Your Majesty," the nobleman whispered, his voice shaking through the silent hall, "that seat has not accepted anyone in 18 years. Camila Hayes stood beneath a ceiling of black crystal and candlelight, one hand wrapped around a silver serving tray, the other pressed against the small bronze medallion at her throat. Less than 10 seconds earlier, she had been invisible, just another temporary waitress in a plain black uniform, assigned to refill the Queen Mother's water glass and keep her eyes lowered. Now every face in the Royal Blood Banquet had turned toward her. Hundreds of vampires sat motionless around long tables covered in white roses, dark glass, and polished silver. At the center of the hall, Queen Mother Isabella Santoro had risen from the highest chair beside the throne and extended one pale hand toward Camila. No one spoke. Even the orchestra had stopped. Camila could hear her own breathing, too quick and too loud in the stillness. She had been warned about this room: never interrupt a royal conversation, never touch anything marked with the Santoro crest, never approach the Queen Mother unless summoned by the king himself. Camila had followed every rule until she noticed Isabella tapping 3 fingers against the arm of her chair, once, twice, 3 times. The gesture had not been meant for Camila alone. Isabella had repeated it while nobles spoke over her, while attendants stared past her, while the banquet continued as though the silent woman at its center had nothing to say. Camila was simply the first person who truly noticed. The pattern stirred something buried in her memory. Her mother had used the same 3 taps years ago whenever words were unsafe. "Watch carefully, something is wrong." Camila had looked toward the Queen Mother's place setting, then toward the silver-haired attendant who had quietly exchanged 2 name cards beneath the wineglasses. She had not understood why, not yet, but she had seen fear in Isabella's eyes, not weakness, a warning. Before Camila could decide whether to step forward, Isabella rose. Her silver gown whispered across the marble floor. 4 royal guards tensed, but the Queen Mother ignored them and walked directly toward the human waitress. Up close, Isabella looked less like a legend and more like a woman who had spent years waiting for someone to listen. Her gaze moved over Camila's face, then dropped to the bronze medallion above her collar. The metal was darkened along one edge, still scarred by the fire that had taken Camila's mother 18 years earlier. Isabella stopped. Her fingers trembled once. Recognition passed across her features so quickly that Camila almost missed it. Then the Queen Mother took Camila's hand. The entire hall reacted with one sharp breath. "Your Majesty," a woman near the council table said, "she is human." Isabella did not look back. She led Camila toward the royal table, each step carrying her farther from the servants' entrance and closer to the man seated beneath the carved black crown. Matteo Santoro watched in complete silence. His skin was white, far paler than Camila's, and his dark suit made his face look carved from winter stone. He did not move, yet the air around him seemed to tighten. Camila had heard stories about the Vampire King, that he had ruled for more than 300 years, that he remembered every promise and every betrayal, that no one spoke out of turn when he was present. She was afraid, but she refused to pull her hand away from Isabella's. The Queen Mother stopped beside her chair. It was taller than the others, carved from dark wood and marked with silver symbols worn smooth by centuries. Isabella placed Camila's palm on the armrest. The medallion against Camila's skin grew warm, though it gave off no light. Matteo rose. Every guest lowered their head at once. He was more than 6 feet tall, and when his pale grey eyes settled on Camila, she felt as though he could hear every thought she was trying to hide. "Mother," he said quietly. Isabella pointed to the chair, then she pointed to Camila. Matteo's expression hardened. "Do you understand what you are asking?" Isabella gave one deliberate nod. Camila swallowed. "I think there has been a mistake." Matteo looked at her as though her voice itself were unexpected. Isabella gently pressed Camila down into the chair. The instant she sat, every candle in the banquet hall went out. Darkness swallowed the tables. A golden symbol flared beneath Camila's hand and spread across the ancient wood like sunlight beneath ice. Somewhere behind her, a glass struck the floor. Then a councilman whispered the words that changed the night. "The Witness Rite has begun." Heavy doors slammed shut around the banquet hall. Locks turned one after another with deep metallic clicks. Matteo stepped toward Camila, his grey eyes sharpening until they looked almost silver. "No one leaves," he commanded. Hundreds of immortal guests remained perfectly still. Camila stared at the glowing mark circling her wrist and understood the truth. The Queen Mother had not offered her a place of honor. She had placed a human girl at the center of a royal trial. 3 hours earlier, Camila Hayes had been worried about nothing more dangerous than losing her house. The foreclosure notice waited on the kitchen table beneath a chipped ceramic mug, its red deadline stamped across the page like an accusation. She had 6 days to pay $4,800, or the small 2-bedroom home her mother had fought to keep would belong to the bank. Camila stood beneath the weak yellow light, fastening the last button of a borrowed black uniform while rain tapped against the windows. The house had been quiet for 18 years, but she still sometimes listened for Evelyn Hayes moving through the hallway, humming while she sorted museum papers at the dining table. All Camila had left of her mother was the house, a box of handwritten notes, and the scorched bronze medallion resting against her collarbone. She touched it before leaving, not because she believed it could protect her, but because it reminded her that Evelyn had once survived impossible rooms by paying attention. The Royal Blood Banquet job had appeared that morning through the catering company one night, $800, more than Camila usually earned in 2 weeks serving breakfast at a roadside diner outside Albany. It would not save the house by itself, but it would buy time, and time was the only thing she could still afford to hope for. By 7 o'clock, a black passenger van carried 12 temporary workers through iron gates nearly 20 feet tall. Beyond them, the Santoro estate rose from the dark hills of upstate New York, less than an hour from the city but hidden behind miles of forest and private road. Towers vanished into low clouds. Hundreds of narrow windows glowed amber against the rain. At the service entrance, every worker surrendered personal electronics and passed through a silver security arch. When Camila stepped beneath it, the medallion grew warm. A pale light flickered once across the scanner, then faded. The guard studied the display. "Old metal," he said. "No active enchantment. Family piece." His gaze lingered on the scorched edge before he waved her through. Inside, the staff manager delivered the rules without smiling. Eyes lowered, voices soft. No photographs. No questions about what the guest ate or did not eat. Human employees were forbidden from entering the Eastern Corridor, the Council Gallery, or any room marked with the Black Crown seal. "You are here to serve," the manager said. "You are not here to be remembered." Camila understood that rule better than most. She had spent years being overlooked by landlords, supervisors, and customers who left coins beneath coffee cups as though kindness were optional. She tied on her apron and followed the other servers into the ballroom. Black crystal chandeliers floated above polished marble. White roses filled silver vases along tables stretching nearly 50 feet. Musicians tuned their instruments behind a curtain of dark velvet. At the center stood 2 carved chairs on a raised platform. The other bore an older crest, a rising sun surrounded by thorns. "Queen Mother Isabella's seat," whispered Jordan, another temporary server. A supervisor snapped his fingers. "Hayes, royal table. Water service only. Do not touch the wine." Camila lifted a silver pitcher that felt heavier than it looked. "Why me? Because the regular server called in sick, and you are the only replacement whose hands are not shaking." They were shaking. Camila simply knew how to hide it. The first guests entered as the clock reached 8. They moved with impossible quiet, dressed in black, silver, and deep crimson. Their skin appeared pale beneath the candlelight, their expressions beautiful and distant. Conversations faded whenever a member of the Santoro family crossed the room. Then Queen Mother Isabella arrived. She wore a silver gown and no crown. 2 attendants guided her toward the platform. Though she did not seem frail, she seemed watchful. Her eyes moved across the doors, the guards, the council tables, and finally paused on the dark shape of Camila's medallion. From across the room, Isabella could not have seen its markings, but something about it held her attention for one uncertain second. Then a silver-haired attendant approached the royal table. Each wineglass had been sealed and assigned by a name card placed beneath its stem. Camila watched him switch the cards for Matteo Santoro and Isabella Santoro, turning the glass prepared for the king into the one now waiting before his mother. No one else reacted. Isabella looked down at the changed place setting. Her face remained calm, but 3 fingers settled against the arm of her chair. Tap, tap, tap. Camila's breath caught. Her mother had taught her that signal when she was a child, during the years when Evelyn sometimes came home frightened and refused to explain why. "Watch carefully. Something is wrong." At exactly 8:15, the northern doors opened, and every conversation faded, crossed the threshold. Matteo Santoro entered without announcement. He did not need one. The guests rose together, chairs sliding softly across marble, heads lowering beneath the presence of a ruler older than every family represented in the room. Camila had expected a crown, a ceremonial cape, perhaps some dramatic symbol of authority. Matteo wore none of them. His suit was black and severe, his dark hair neatly swept back, his skin far paler than the humans serving the tables. He looked no older than his early 30s, but the silence around him carried the weight of centuries. He moved toward the raised platform at an unhurried pace. His pale grey eyes passed over the guards, the council tables, the musicians, and the royal place settings without revealing what he had noticed. For one brief second his gaze settled on Camila. Her hands tightened around the silver water pitcher. Then he looked away. Matteo stopped beside Queen Mother Isabella and waited until she was seated before taking his own chair. The gesture was small, but Camila noticed it. Whatever the stories said about his coldness, he still showed his mother respect in a room where powerful people seemed determined to speak for her. Lord Alessandro Moretti approached carrying a sealed document bound with black ribbon. "Your Majesty, the 5 great houses have submitted a formal request for a succession hearing." Matteo did not reach for the paper. "This is a banquet, Lord Moretti." His voice was quiet, yet it traveled easily across the hall. "Not a hearing. Tonight it may need to be both." A low murmur moved through the tables. Camila poured water into Isabella's glass and kept her eyes lowered while listening. Across from Matteo sat Serafina Moretti in a deep red gown, her silver blonde hair pinned with black stones. Camila recognized her from the staff briefing. She was Lord Moretti's daughter and the council's favored candidate to become royal consort. Serafina smiled as though the discussion had already ended in her favor. "The council is asking for stability," she said. "The eastern territories are divided, and the human districts no longer trust the promises made by the court. A formal union between our houses would reassure both sides." Matteo rested one hand on the table. "A marriage arranged to calm politicians usually creates more frightened politicians." Lord Moretti placed the sealed document near the black crown emblem. "A king does not choose only for himself." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. A thin mist formed along the outside of Camila's picture. Matteo looked at him. "Be careful when explaining the obligations of a king to one." Lord Moretti lowered his head, but his expression remained confident. "The charter allows 5 great houses to request a hearing." "A hearing," Matteo replied. "Not a binding vote." His eyes shifted toward Isabella. "No vote can proceed without the Queen Mother's seal." Camila saw Serafina's smile tighten by the smallest degree. Isabella was not merely an honored guest. She was the final barrier between the Moretti family and the power they wanted. If Matteo accepted Serafina, Lord Moretti would gain influence over the royal guard and the military houses loyal to the crown. If Isabella refused to place her seal on the accord, the council could argue, threaten and pressure, but it could not legally force the union. Camila looked toward the sealed wineglass positioned before Isabella. The silver-haired attendant who had switched the name cards stood near the western wall with perfect stillness. He did not look nervous. He looked trained not to be noticed. That made him more unsettling. Matteo lifted his water glass, leaving the sealed wine untouched. "There will be no hearing tonight." Lord Moretti's fingers remained on the document. "Then the houses will submit the request again at midnight. You may submit paper until the palace runs out of ink." A few nobles lowered their eyes to hide their reactions. "You cannot delay forever." Matteo's expression did not change. "I only need to delay until the truth becomes more useful than your urgency." For the first time, Lord Moretti stepped back. The orchestra resumed, but the room did not relax. Camila continued serving while watching Isabella from the corner of her eye. The Queen Mother glanced toward the altered name cards, then toward the sealed wine. She did not touch it. She did not accuse anyone. Whatever she suspected, she was not ready to reveal it. Her fingers returned to the arm of the chair. Tap, tap, tap. Camila felt the old warning settle into her bones. Isabella was not asking her to speak. She was asking her to watch. Whatever the Queen Mother feared, it had nothing to do with the vote alone. For the next 2 hours, Camila carried water through a ballroom, determined to pretend nothing was wrong. Music drifted beneath the black crystal chandeliers. Glasses touched in careful toasts. Noble families smiled across 50-foot tables while studying one another with eyes that never softened. Yet the sealed wine before Isabella remained untouched. Each time an attendant approached the royal platform, the Queen Mother rested 3 fingers against the arm of her chair. Tap, tap. Camila understood now that the signal meant more than danger. It meant wait, watch, do not move until the truth can no longer be hidden. Evelyn Hayes had taught her the same lesson when Camila was a child. Fear made people rush. Attention made them useful. Camila studied the service pattern while refilling water glasses. Every royal wine glass arrived already sealed from a locked cabinet near the eastern wall. A steward checked the silver mark, read the name card beneath the stem, and placed the glass before its assigned guest. No server could move it afterward without written approval. The silver-haired attendant had not corrected a simple place setting. He had changed the official identity of the glass. The wine prepared for Matteo now waited before Isabella. Camila did not know what the glass contained. Suspicion was not proof. Until the seal was opened in public, the attendant could claim an innocent mistake, replace the glass, and erase the only evidence that anything unusual had happened. Near 9:30, Camila found the staff manager beside the service corridor. "I need to report a problem," she said quietly. He kept his eyes on the clipboard in his hands. "Then report a spill or a missing tray." A royal attendant switched the name cards beneath 2 sealed wine glasses. His pencil stopped. "You are mistaken." I watched him do it. The king's card is now beneath the Queen Mother's glass. The manager finally looked at her, and the fear in his face lasted less than a second. "Return to your station. Should someone inspect the seal?" "You do not have the authority to request that." "Who does? Not a temporary server." His voice stayed low beneath the music. "The royal platform follows rules older than the state of New York. An accusation without proof would end this banquet and place every human employee under investigation." Camila held his gaze. "And if I am right," the manager looked toward the ballroom doors, "then I am not powerful enough to protect either of us." He was not threatening her. He was afraid. That distinction mattered. He could not replace her without permission from the royal steward, and he would not risk approaching Matteo with a claim he could not prove. "Finish your shift," he said. "Say nothing unless you are asked directly." Camila returned to the ballroom. At 10 o'clock, 5 House representatives pressed their seals onto the succession request. Matteo refused to touch the document. Isabella withheld her approval. Serafina Moretti remained composed, though her silver ring tapped once against the table. Across the room, the silver-haired attendant adjusted his cuff almost immediately. The movements were small enough to be coincidence. Still, Camila remembered them. She needed a pattern, not a guess. A royal steward announced that the sealed wine would be opened at 11 for the formal toast. The red glass before Isabella had not moved. Camila approached under the excuse of replacing her water. 2 guards stood between the serving lane and Matteo, making direct conversation impossible. Even if she called out, the person who switched the cards could remove the glass before anyone examined it. Isabella had already told her to wait. Camila leaned closer without lifting her eyes. "I saw the cards," she whispered. The Queen Mother's hand went still. "The glass in front of you was assigned to the king." Isabella turned toward her. There was no surprise in her expression, only confirmation. She had noticed the interfere, but she needed outside the vampire houses to witness it. Her gaze moved to the sealed glass, then to Camila. 3 fingers touched the chair. Tap, tap, tap. Isabella added 1 slow line across the polished wood. Camila remembered the motion from Evelyn's old notebooks. "Do not reveal what you know. Not yet." A bell sounded from the eastern wall. The steward raised the first silver key and announced that the royal seals would be opened in 13 minutes. Camila looked at the clock. 10:47. The manager would not help. The guards would not let her approach Matteo. Isabella could not expose the suspicion before the glass became evidence. Camila tightened her grip on the pitcher. She would wait until the seal was broken in front of the entire court. Then, whatever it cost her, she would make certain no one drank from that glass. At 10:59, the orchestra stopped in the middle of a note. Silence spread through the ballroom as the master steward carried a narrow silver key toward the royal table. Camila stood 6 feet behind Isabella with the water pitcher held against her waist. The sealed glass remained before the Queen Mother. Beneath its stem rested Matteo Santoro's name card. The silver-haired attendant stood near the western wall among the palace staff, perfectly still. Serafina Moretti watched from across the table. Her father kept one hand beside the succession accord. The clock struck 11. The master steward bowed. "By ancient custom, the royal wine will now be opened before the assembled houses." Matteo gave a slight nod. The steward removed the first silver cover from the king's place. His eyes dropped to the name card beneath the glass. Isabella Santoro. Matteo noticed it the same instant. His expression sharpened and his command was already forming when the steward spoke. A placement error, Your Majesty. I will correct it immediately. Correct the setting and proceed, Lord Moretti said. Matteo turned his pale grey gaze toward him. You do not direct my table. Lord Moretti lowered his head. Of course not, Your Majesty. The master steward reached for the second glass, the one positioned before Isabella. His key entered the seal. Camila watched the small lock turn. The silver band opened with a quiet click. Now the suspicious glass stood uncovered before the entire court. The seal had been broken publicly. It could no longer be exchanged without witnesses. The steward reached to move it. Do not touch that glass. Camila's voice crossed the ballroom before fear could stop her. Hundreds of faces turned toward the human server. One of the guards stepped between her and the platform, but Matteo raised a pale hand. The guard stopped. Speak, the king said. Camila forced her fingers to loosen around the picture. That glass originally carried your name card. I saw a royal attendant switch the cards before you entered the room. A murmur passed through the nobles. I reported it to the staff manager at 9:30. Matteo looked toward the service doors. The manager stepped forward, his face pale but steady. She did report it, Your Majesty. I told her not to make an accusation without proof. And now? Matteo asked. The manager glanced at the open seal. Now the glass can be examined without anyone claiming she altered it. Matteo's gaze moved across the service staff. No attendant leaves this room, no glass is moved. Seal the wine chamber. The silver-haired attendant remained where he stood, his expression controlled. Camila pointed toward him. He was the one who switched the cards. 2 royal guards took positions beside him. He did not resist or speak. A switched card proves carelessness, nothing more. Then the truth should inconvenience no one, Matteo replied. Isabella turned toward Camila. From this distance, she could finally see the medallion clearly, the scorched bronze, the faded crest, the narrow crack along its lower edge. Recognition entered her eyes. She touched the medallion, then pointed to the open glass. Camila understood the request. You want me to place it near the wine? Isabella nodded once. Camila removed the chain and held the bronze disc above the rim without touching the liquid. For 1 second nothing happened. Then the medallion grew hot in her fingers. A thin golden line appeared along the scorched edge. The red wine clouded from the center outward, turning dark silver beneath the chandeliers. A dry scent, like cedar smoke after rain, rose into the air. The master steward stepped back. An elderly councilwoman stared at the glass. Ash of St. Vesper, she whispered. A forbidden compound designed to suppress royal healing. The ballroom fell silent. Matteo looked from the altered wine to the card bearing his name. How long? He asked. A ceremonial serving could weaken an ancient vampire for several hours, the councilwoman answered. Long enough to prevent him from defending the throne. The succession accord lay only a few inches from Lord Moretti's hand. Camila understood the timing. A weakened king, a forced hearing, 5 houses prepared to vote. Matteo understood it too. His face became colder than the marble beneath them. Take the attendant into custody. Preserve the glass. Every seal, key and record from the wine chamber comes directly to me. Isabella still watched the medallion. Slowly she lifted her hands and formed a private sign Camila had not seen since childhood. 1 finger across the palm, then 2 taps over the heart. Evelyn's sign, her mother's name. Camila forgot the watching court. You knew her, she whispered. Isabella reached for Camila's hand and held it with sudden urgency. The Queen Mother had not merely recognized an old object. She had recognized the daughter of the woman who had carried it out of the palace 18 years ago. The moment Isabella closed her fingers around Camila's hand, a single silver line awakened along the armrest of the ancient chair. It glowed for less than a second, then went still. Matteo saw it. So did the elderly councilwoman standing beside the royal table. Her face tightened with recognition. The chair has acknowledged a possible witness, she said. Lord Moretti rose at once. It has acknowledged nothing. A human server interrupted a ceremony and carried an unidentified relic into the hall. Isabella turned toward him without releasing Camila's hand. Her silence carried more force than his accusation. She placed 1 palm on the chair, then pointed to Camila. Matteo's pale grey eyes narrowed. You wish to invoke the witness rite. Isabella nodded once. Serafina Moretti stood beside her father. The old rite cannot be opened over a misplaced glass. Matteo looked toward the wine that had turned dark silver. The glass contained ash of St. Vesper. An attendant may have acted alone, Serafina replied. Then an inquiry should confirm that, Matteo said. The elderly councilwoman stepped closer to Camila. The chair does not determine guilt. It recognizes only that evidence affecting the crown has been witnessed by someone outside the dispute. She turned toward the assembled houses. For the right to begin, the witness must belong to no vampire family, hold no claim in the succession, swear loyalty to no member of this council, and have directly observed the disputed act. Her gaze returned to Camila. Miss Hayes is a temporary employee of an outside catering company. She reported the switched cards at 9:30, before anyone knew the wine contained a forbidden substance. That makes her statement independent of what was discovered afterward. Lord Moretti's expression hardened. Independence does not make her trustworthy. No, Matteo said. That is why witnesses are questioned. Camila looked from the glowing chair to the locked wine glass. What happens if I agree? You will remain under royal protection until dawn or until the evidence is fully examined and a lawful judgment is confirmed, Matteo answered. No house may remove you, question you in private, threaten your employment, alter your memory, or force you to change your statement. Who decides when the evidence has been fully examined? Camila asked. Several nobles shifted at the directness of the question. Matteo did not. The courtkeeper verifies the evidence. My mother confirms the process with her seal. Neither I nor the council can end the rite alone. Camila glanced at Isabella. And if I refuse, you give an ordinary statement and leave the platform under guard. Matteo's voice remained calm. My mother may request the rite. She cannot compel you to enter it. Isabella watched him carefully, then gave Camila a slow nod, confirming the promise. Camila looked down at the scorched medallion in her palm. Why did the chair react to this? The councilwoman examined it without touching, because it is part of the first Santoro royal ward. Its magic remains dormant unless it encounters a threat connected to the ruling bloodline. That is why the security arch detected old metal but no active enchantment. The ash of St. Vesper awakened what was sealed inside it. Isabella formed Evelyn's private sign over her heart. Matteo recognized it immediately. For the first time his control slipped. Not much. A pause. A breath held too long. Evelyn Hayes appears in a sealed palace record from 18 years ago, he said. Camila stared at him. The same year my mother died. Yes, and the same year Queen Isabella lost her voice. Matteo did not answer, but the silence confirmed the connection. Lord Moretti stepped toward the platform. A damaged relic and an old name do not establish treason. The chair has not established treason, the councilwoman replied. It has recognized sufficient grounds for protected inquiry. Nothing more. Isabella pointed toward the poisoned wine, then toward the succession accord beside Lord Moretti, a weakened king. 5 houses demanding a hearing, a vote prepared before midnight. The connection was not proof, but it was enough to ask questions no one in the room wanted answered. Matteo looked at Camila. If you enter the rite, every door will seal. No one leaves until the process ends. Camila thought of the foreclosure notice waiting on her kitchen table. She thought of the $800 she might never receive. Then she looked at Isabella, surrounded by nobles who had ignored her warnings for years. Camila handed the water pitcher to the staff manager. Tell me what to do. Isabella rose and offered the chair. She did not pull Camila forward. She waited. Matteo did not command her to sit. Camila stepped onto the platform and lowered herself into the ancient seat by her own choice. Every candle in the ballroom went dark. Golden light spread beneath her palm and circled her wrist. The palace doors closed with a thunderous finality and deep locks turned inside the walls. The witness rite has begun, the courtkeeper whispered. Matteo moved beside the chair, his eyes hard as silver. No one leaves. Camila looked across the trapped court and understood what Isabella had truly given her. Not honor, time, protection, and the chance to tell the truth before someone powerful could bury it again. The golden light around Camila's wrist settled into a steady band as the courtkeeper opened a leather ledger beside the sealed evidence. Silver lamps were placed around the platform, leaving the rest of the ballroom in shadow. No one moved toward the locked doors. No one was permitted to. The witness will answer before the full court, the keeper announced. Questions must concern her independence, her observations, or the disputed evidence. No private examination will be allowed. Camila rested her hands on the arms of the ancient chair. Isabella stood beside her. Matteo remained several feet away, close enough to protect the process but not close enough to control it. State your full name, the keeper said. Camila Evelyn Hayes. Isabella's eyes sharpened at the middle name. Have you ever worked for the Santoro family or any vampire house represented here? No, tonight is my first time inside this palace. Did anyone instruct you to watch the royal table? Only my supervisor. I was assigned to water service. Describe what you personally observed. Camila spoke slowly. She explained how each sealed glass had been placed according to the card beneath its stem. She described the silver-haired attendant exchanging Matteo's card with Isabella's before the king entered. She described reporting the change to the staff manager at 9:30, long before anyone identified the substance in the wine. She described Isabella's warning signal and her decision to wait until the seal was opened publicly. She did not mention guesses. She did not name a mastermind. She gave the court only what her own eyes had confirmed. When she finished, the keeper called the staff manager forward. "Did Miss Hayes report the switched cards before the toast?" "Yes," he answered. She named the attendant and both royal cards. "Did she claim the glass contained poison?" "No." She asked that it be inspected. The keeper pressed a silver seal into the ledger. "The timing of her report is verified." Lord Moretti raised one hand. "One question," the keeper said. "Did anyone pay you to make this accusation?" Camila looked directly at him. "No." "Did anyone promise to protect your home or your employment?" "No one in this room knew I had either one to lose." The answer moved through the court more quietly than a whisper. The keeper closed Moretti's questioning before he could continue. Matteo then requested permission to speak. The keeper granted one question. "How did you understand my mother's signs?" Matteo asked. "My mother taught them to me when I was a child. She called them emergency signals for moments when speaking was unsafe." Camila touched the medallion resting on the evidence table. 3 taps meant watch carefully. A line across wood meant do not reveal what you know. The sign Queen Isabella made over her heart was Evelyn's personal sign. Isabella repeated it. 1 finger across her pale heart. Matteo's face became still. "Evelyn Hayes appears in a sealed palace record from 18 years ago," he said. The court keeper turned toward him. "The record may be introduced if it relates to the witness and the disputed evidence." Matteo nodded. The keeper unlocked a narrow evidence cabinet built into the inner wall of the ballroom. It was not an exit. It had no passage beyond it. 2 keys were required, one held by Matteo and one worn around Isabella's neck. Inside lay a black case marked with the Santoro crest. The keeper opened it and removed a report dated October 17th, 18 years earlier. Queen Mother Isabella Santoro was discovered unconscious in the Eastern Archive at 11:42 that night, he read. The time of exposure was never established. He turned another page. At 11:46, an alarm reported a fire of the Hudson Historical Museum. Camila gripped the chair. "My mother died there." The keeper continued. Evelyn Hayes was a temporary restoration specialist assigned to artifacts transferred from the Santoro archive. Palace records show she left the estate earlier that evening carrying an authorized restoration case. Matteo looked toward Isabella. She formed 2 careful signs, not enemy, protection. The keeper translated only what the gestures allowed. "The Queen Mother confirms that Evelyn acted to protect her. The curse upon Her Majesty permits warnings and denials, but prevents her from naming anyone connected to the betrayal." Serafina received permission to speak. "Then Evelyn may still have been involved in some other way." Isabella struck the chair once and repeated the sign for protection. Matteo's gaze hardened, but the keeper raised a hand before emotion could replace procedure. He examined the final binding of the report. 1 page had been removed cleanly after the document entered royal custody. The royal seal remained intact above the torn edge. "This record was altered from within the palace," he said. Camila stared at the missing page. The fire and Isabella's poisoning had happened on the same night. Her mother had handled artifacts from the royal archive. Someone had erased the page that explained why. Whatever Evelyn carried away from the palace had been dangerous enough for someone to bury every record connecting her to it. The missing page changed the way the court looked at Camila. Until that moment, most of the nobles had treated her as an inconvenience, a human employee who had witnessed something dangerous by chance. Now her mother's name appeared inside a sealed royal record connected to the night. Isabella lost her voice. Serafina Moretti requested permission to speak. The court keeper granted it. "An altered record proves only that someone removed information," Serafina said. "It does not establish why Evelyn Hayes left the palace carrying a royal artifact." Isabella's fingers tightened against the table. The keeper raised one hand before she could respond. "The Queen Mother has confirmed that Evelyn acted to protect her. Protection does not explain everything," Serafina replied. "A person may prevent one danger while creating another." Camila felt the golden band around her wrist grow warm as her pulse quickened beneath it. The rite was not judging Serafina. It was only reminding Camila that every eye in the room was waiting for her to react. She remembered her mother's lesson. Fear made people rush. Truth required attention. Lord Moretti received permission next. "Evelyn Hayes left the estate earlier that evening with an authorized restoration case," he said. "Queen Isabella was discovered at 11:42. 4 minutes later, the museum alarm was triggered. The palace record was later altered. Tonight, Evelyn's daughter arrives carrying a missing piece of the royal ward and becomes the protected witness in a hearing that prevents the succession vote. He paused. That is an extraordinary chain of coincidences. Murmurs moved through the 5 great houses. Moretti had not invented anything. He had simply arranged true details so that suspicion sounded like proof. The courtkeeper turned toward her. "You may respond." Camila lifted her chin. "I did not know the medallion belonged to the Santoro ward. I did not know my mother had worked with artifacts from this palace. I came here because an outside catering company offered me $800 for one night of work." She looked toward Moretti. "I reported the switched cards before the wine was examined. If I had planned to interfere with the succession hearing, I chose an unreliable plan." A few nobles looked away, considering the answer. Serafina folded her hands. "Ignorance is easy to claim." Matteo requested permission to speak. The keeper granted it. Suspicion is also easy to claim when evidence refuses to support it. Serafina turned toward him. "You are defending her." Matteo's expression remained cold. "I am defending the procedure your family demanded the crown respect. Her mother may have prepared her for this night," Camila answered after the keeper allowed her. "My mother died when I was 9. She taught me emergency signals and left behind notebooks damaged by smoke. For 18 years I believed she died because of faulty museum wiring. If she prepared me, she never told me what I was preparing for." Isabella lowered her eyes. Grief moved across her face before she hid it. Serafina addressed the keeper. "The notebook should be preserved under neutral custody." Camila's hands tightened around the arms of the chair. They were in her house, nearly an hour away by road, inside a cardboard box beneath the stairs. Matteo did not answer for her. "Do you consent to their retrieval?" the keeper asked. "Only under conditions," Camila said. "A neutral team chooses the route and records the entire visit. 2 observers from different houses accompany them. Nothing except the notebooks is removed." The keeper nodded. "Accepted." He ordered a written authorization prepared, then selected 1 royal archivist, 1 human legal clerk, and 2 observers from houses that had opposed each other in the succession dispute. They would travel in a palace vehicle, collect the notebooks, seal them on camera, and return before dawn. Camila provided the address and signed permission for entry. Serafina's gaze shifted toward the bronze medallion. "The ward fragment should also remain under secure custody. It is already entered as evidence," the keeper said. "It belongs to the crown," Serafina insisted. Isabella struck the table once. She formed a precise sequence of royal signs. "I gave it to Evelyn, for protection." The keeper translated, then consulted the legal charter beside his ledger. "A royal object personally gifted by the Queen Mother remains the recipient's lawful property unless it was declared non-transferable. This fragment was never placed on the restricted register." Isabella pointed from Evelyn's sign to Camila. "Inheritance. Its ownership passed legally to Miss Hayes." For the first time, Serafina's composure slipped. Only for a second, Matteo saw it. So did Camila. He stepped closer to the witness chair, leaving several feet between them. "No one will remove the witness, alter her memory, or seize evidence connected to this inquiry without the court-keeper's authorization," he said. Lord Moretti looked toward the sealed doors. "You place 1 human above 5 ancient houses." Matteo's pale face revealed nothing. "I place verified evidence above inherited power." The court fell silent. Matteo had not declared Camila innocent. He had not promised to trust her. But he had made certain that suspicion alone would not destroy her before the truth returned from the house Evelyn Hayes had left behind. The retrieval team left the palace at 11:23, and for nearly an hour the ballroom remained suspended in uneasy silence. No one could leave. No one could privately question Camila. No one could touch the altered name cards, the poisoned wine, or the scorched medallion resting inside a clear evidence case beside the court-keeper. The team sent to collect Evelyn's notebooks was still on the road, so the keeper allowed examination of evidence already sealed inside the hall. At 12:18, Matteo requested permission to speak. "The ward fragment reacted to the ash of Saint Vesper," he said. "Could it also preserve testimony?" The elderly councilwoman studied the bronze disc through the case. The first Santoro wards were created with 2 purposes. They defended the ruling bloodline, and some preserved a sworn memory when ordinary records could not be trusted. She pointed toward the narrow crack along the medallion's edge. "That is not fire damage, it is a sealed opening." Lord Moretti leaned forward. "Then why was it never opened before tonight?" "Because it vanished 18 years ago," the councilwoman replied, "and because only Santoro blood can unlock the testimony inside." Isabella touched 2 fingers to her palm, then pointed toward Matteo. Blood, open. The courtkeeper turned to Camila. The object belongs to you and remains evidence. It cannot be opened without your consent. Camila looked at the medallion her mother had left behind. Will opening it destroy the memory? No, the councilwoman said. If the imprint survived the museum fire, the ward will release a copy and preserve the original seal. Camila, open it. Her consent was recorded. Isabella pressed her royal seal into the ledger. Matteo placed one fingertip against the hidden seam. A single dark red drop touched the bronze. The medallion opened with a quiet click. Golden light rose above the evidence table and formed the image of Evelyn Hayes wearing a museum identification badge. Her face flickered through smoke damage, but her voice remained clear enough to understand. Isabella, if the Santoro bloodline has opened this memory, then the ward survived. The Queen Mother covered her mouth. The image shifted to the Eastern Archive. Evelyn stood beside Isabella while dark silver stains spread through a ceremonial wine ledger. Someone replaced the royal inventory and removed the protection record, Evelyn said. I found ash of St. Vesper in a bottle assigned to the king. I used the counterword on Isabella, but the curse had already begun. She will survive. Although it may prevent her from naming anyone connected to the betrayal, the image broke, then returned inside the restoration wing of the Hudson Historical Museum. A carved crest bearing the rising sun lay on Evelyn's work table. Camila recognized it as the removable crest from Isabella's chair. The crest was sent here for restoration 3 days ago, Evelyn said. She folded a document and placed it beneath the inner lining. The names and payment records are hidden inside. The crest will return to the palace tomorrow, where only Isabella's seal can open it. The medallion holds this memory, not the list. If I keep both pieces together, neither will remain safe. A shadow crossed the far side of the recorded room. The image distorted before the person's face appeared. Someone accessed the transfer record. The memory vanished into white light, then returned with Evelyn looking directly into the ward. Camila, if this reaches you one day, forgive me for leaving questions behind. I could not risk telling you what this was. Without Santoro blood, the medallion would remain dormant, and no one searching our home would know what it carried. Her expression softened. I was trying to keep the truth alive long enough for an honest person to find it. The memory faded. Camila remained motionless in the witness chair. Evelyn had discovered the earlier poisoning, protected Isabella, and hidden the names of those involved. The damaged testimony had not revealed the mastermind. The councilwoman examined the open ward. The memory bears Evelyn Hayes' blood imprint and the Queen Mother's original seal. It was created 18 years ago and damaged by heat, but it is authentic. Matteo looked toward Camila. Your mother saved mine. His voice had lost its formal distance, and someone erased her from the record. Isabella approached the chair and pressed her seal against the rising sun crest. A hidden panel opened beneath the carving. The compartment was empty. Dust outlined the shape of a folded document, but the paper itself was gone. The courtkeeper immediately requested the pre-banquet inventory record. A photograph taken at 7:10 that evening showed the dust seal inside the compartment still unbroken. Now a fresh mark crossed its edge. One short silver thread clung to the wood. The staff manager identified it as material used only in the formal service gloves issued for tonight's banquet. The list had survived inside the chair for 18 years. Someone had removed it after 7:10, while the palace was filling with guests. The silver thread reduced the search from hundreds of guests to 28 members of the formal service staff. The courtkeeper ordered every issued glove counted against the banquet inventory. Each pair had been numbered, signed out, and woven with a slightly different silver pattern for security. 27 pairs were complete. The final entry belonged to Adrian Vale, the silver-haired attendant Camila had identified. His right glove was missing. The remaining left glove matched the thread from the hidden compartment in color, weave, and inventory mark. Adrian stood near the western wall between two guards, his hands visible at his sides. He had served the palace for 12 years and showed no sign of panic. That calm made Camila watch him more carefully. "Raise your right sleeve," the courtkeeper said. Adrian obeyed. A dark silver mark circled his wrist, shaped like a closed eye beneath a ring of thorns. The design resembled the open eye engraved on Serafina Moretti's ring, though it was not. The elderly councilwoman examined it from several feet away. "A household binding," she said. "The mark was created through authority belonging to House Moretti. It does not identify the individual who issued the order. Lord Moretti requested permission to speak. Many servants once trained under our household. A shared crest proves nothing beyond association." The staff manager opened Adrian's employment record. Adrian Vale has never served House Moretti. The court-keeper turned to Adrian. Did you open the compartment beneath the Queen Mother's crest, Tut? Adrian tried to speak. The mark on his wrist darkened, and no sound emerged. Camila studied his face. The first question had involved only his own action, yet the wording might still connect that action to the hidden recipient. Ask what his hand did, she said after receiving permission, not why he did it or who received the result. The keeper changed the question. Did your right hand lift the panel beneath the rising sun crest? Adrian nodded. Did your right hand remove a folded document? Another nod. Did you switch the two royal name cards? He nodded again. Did you place the forbidden substance inside the wine? Adrian shook his head. Did you know the glass contained ash of St. Vesper? He shook his head once more. Matteo watched him without blinking. Why would you exchange royal cards without knowing the purpose? The mark tightened before Adrian could answer. The keeper revised the question. Were you told the exchange was part of an authorized security test? Adrian nodded. The answer shifted the room. Adrian had not acted innocently, but neither had he known the full plan. Someone had used his palace training, a false claim of authority, and a binding mark to make him obey without asking questions. The court-keeper requested the time record from the chair's inner ward. Isabella pressed her seal against the crest. A faint line of light appeared inside the compartment, displaying the last time it had been opened. 11:17. The witness rite had sealed every exit at 11:12. The missing list could not have left the ballroom after Adrian removed it. Where did you place the document? The keeper asked. Adrian's lips parted, but the binding silenced him again. The councilwoman explained the two legal methods of release. House Moretti may voluntarily withdraw the authority behind the mark. That is the fastest and safest method. The royal seal may also break it by force of law, but the process could damage portions of the servant's memory. Serafina placed her ring on the evidence table. Test the source first. The councilwoman held the ring near Adrian's wrist. The open eye on the silver band answered the eye beneath his skin with the same pale light. The magic shared a household origin. It still did not prove whether Serafina, Lord Moretti, or another authorized member had created the binding. The crest must be formally renounced before the court, the councilwoman said. Serafina reached for the ring. Lord Moretti raised one hand. As head of House Moretti, I object. A family crest cannot be renounced without a private council and a recorded transfer of authority. His language was legal, his urgency was not. The court-keeper opened the ancient charter. During a protected inquiry, temporary renunciation may be ordered obstructs verified testimony. Ownership of the crest remains unchanged. Lord Moretti's objection disappeared. Serafina looked at her father, then at Adrian. If I renounce it, can the mark be restored later? Only with the servant's consent, the councilwoman answered. Adrian met Serafina's eyes. Fear crossed his face for the first time, not fear of her. Fear of the person standing beyond her shoulder. Camila followed his gaze. It passed Serafina and stopped near the council tables, where Lord Moretti's private secretary stood with both hands folded over a black document case. The case had not been present when the witness rite began. Camila remembered seeing it carried across the room during the confusion surrounding the poisoned glass. She looked toward the court-keeper. The list is still here, she said. Adrian opened the compartment 5 minutes after the doors were sealed. He could not take it outside. Her eyes settled on the black case, but he could hand it to someone who expected the room to open again before anyone discovered it was missing. The black document case became the center of the ballroom without moving an inch. Lord Moretti's private secretary, Julian Cross, stood behind the council table with both hands resting near its brass clasp. Camila kept her eyes on the case. It was not at that table when the witness rite began, she said after the court-keeper granted permission. I saw a service clerk carry it across the room during the first evidence collection. Her memory alone was not enough. The court-keeper requested the inventory photographs taken when the doors sealed at 11:12. The first image showed Julian standing behind Lord Moretti with no case beside him. A second image, recorded at 11:20, showed the black case beneath his left hand. The neutral evidence clerk stepped forward. For 8 minutes after the doors sealed, designated staff were permitted to move through the service lane to collect glasses and documents under supervision. The case crossed the room during that period. Adrian had opened the hidden compartment at 11:17. The timing fit. The court-keeper turned to Julian. Did you receive that case after 11:12? Julian adjusted his glasses. Yes, from whom? A palace attendant, Adrian Vale? Julian hesitated. Yes, Lord Moretti requested permission to speak. The case contains privileged succession records. Its movement proves nothing. Its timing provides reasonable grounds for examination, the keeper replied. 2 neutral observers reviewed the photographs and signed the request. Isabella added her royal seal only to confirm the warrant. The court keeper, not the Queen Mother, ordered Julian to place the case on the evidence table. Julian obeyed. A grey wax strip sealed the brass clasp. The keeper examined the tiny number pressed into it. Evidence wax, issued at 11:14, he said. This case was sealed after the rite began. He broke the wax beneath the eyes of both observers. Inside lay succession contracts, 5 voting declarations and a folded document bearing the rising sun crest. Its shape matched the dust outline inside Isabella's chair. Camila felt the room heighten. The missing list had been recovered. The keeper unfolded it carefully. The first page contained names. The second contained payment dates and coded account numbers. The final sheet listed warehouse transfers beside a reference for Ash of St. Vesper. A Moretti authorization cipher appeared near the bottom, but the keeper raised one hand before the court could react. These markings appear connected to House Moretti. They are not verified yet. Matteo nodded. Then verify them. The keeper placed the document beside the succession request signed earlier that night. The same rotating cipher appeared on both, a pattern generated daily by Lord Moretti's private office. Julian's face remained controlled. Serafina's did not. She looked less shocked by the conspiracy than by how much of it had been carried out under authority bearing her family name. Matteo turned toward Adrian. His testimony can establish how the list entered the case. Serafina placed her ring beside Adrian's wrist. I temporarily renounce any binding imposed through this crest without his informed consent. Pale silver light passed between the ring and the mark. The closed eye around Adrian's wrist faded. He drew a careful breath. The court-keeper began with narrow questions. Who instructed you to exchange the royal name cards, Julian Cross? What reason did he give? He said it was part of an authorized security test. Who instructed you to open the compartment in the Queen Mother's chair? Julian Cross. Did he tell you what the document contained? No. Did you personally receive an order from Lord Moretti? No. Adrian's answers established his actions without pretending he knew the entire plan. The keeper turned to Julian. The cipher on these instructions matches the one used by Lord Moretti's office tonight. Explain how you obtained it. Julian looked toward his employer. The written directive came through the private office. Signed by whom? It carried Lord Moretti's authorization cipher. Did you witness him create it? No. Lord Moretti leaned back. Then the document may have been misused. Matteo did not accuse him. That possibility will be examined. The keeper ordered Lord Moretti's official cipher device secured, along with his correspondence records and financial ledgers. Neutral guards took positions around Julian and Lord Moretti. Serafina remained at the table under separate supervision. No one had cleared her. No one had condemned her. The evidence had only begun to define what she knew. Camila looked at the recovered list beneath the silver lamps. Adrian had been used. Julian had carried the orders. Lord Moretti's private cipher connected the chain to his office. The truth had not yet reached a lawful judgment, but it had finally acquired something suspicion could not erase. A documented path. By 2:20 in the morning, the recovered documents had been photographed, catalogued, and examined beneath 3 independent seals. The court-keeper worked beside a royal archivist, a human legal clerk, and 2 observers from rival houses. No conclusion was announced until each mark had been checked twice. Camila remained in the witness chair while the golden band around her wrist glowed faintly against the dark wood. The retrieval team was still returning with Evelyn's notebooks, but the evidence already inside the ballroom had formed a documented chain. Adrian Vale had switched the royal name cards under instructions delivered by Julian Cross. He had removed the hidden list at 11:17, 5 minutes after the doors sealed. Julian had received it and placed it inside a case sealed with evidence wax issued after the rite began. The written directive carried the rotating cipher used by Lord Moretti's private office. Matteo stood beside the evidence table, his pale face unreadable. A cipher may be stolen, he said. Verify the source before this court treats it as proof. The archivist brought forward Lord Moretti's secured authorization device. Every command involving royal wine, military access, or protected records required 2 forms of approval. A personal signet generated the cipher. A warded voice mark confirmed the authority behind it without storing the spoken words themselves. The device could hide a command from ordinary review, but it could not erase the deeper imprint revealed under a witness rite and the Queen Mother's seal. Lord Moretti had apparently believed that ancient safeguard would never be invoked. 3 commands had been generated that evening. The first approved the succession documents, the second authorized movement within the royal wine inventory, the third had been removed from the visible ledger. The archivist restored its imprint beneath the warded glass. Remove the document beneath the rising sun crest after the hall is sealed. Deliver it to Julian Cross. The command had been created at 10:52 with Lord Moretti's personal signet and matching voice mark. The ballroom fell silent. Lord Moretti remained behind neutral guards, his expression controlled. My authorization may have been used under false circumstances. The keeper turned to Julian. Who gave you the directive? Julian lowered his eyes. It arrived through Lord Moretti's private office. Did you witness him create it? No. Did anyone else have lawful access to the signet and voice mark? Not according to office protocol. The financial records were examined next. The coded accounts on Evelyn's list matched transfers from 2 Moretti-controlled trusts 18 years earlier. At that time, the trusts had been managed by the previous head of House Moretti, Alessandro's father. The payments connected House Moretti to the altered wine inventory and the museum restoration schedule, but they did not yet prove Alessandro personally directed the original conspiracy. Recent transactions were clearer. The same trusts had purchased Ash of St. Vesper 3 weeks before the banquet. The warehouse release carried Julian's signature and Lord Moretti's current authorization cipher. Serafina requested permission to speak. Does my signature appear on any poison order? Wine transfer or instruction concerning the chair. The archivist searched the verified records. No, your household crest was used to create Adrian's binding mark, but no document shows that you personally approved it. Then what remains under investigation? Whether you knew the succession effort depended on weakening the king, whether you permitted your crest to be used without consent records, and whether false political claims were presented under your name. Serafina looked toward her father. She did not defend him. She did not claim innocence. The courtkeeper summarized only what the evidence supported. Lord Alessandro Moretti had directly authorized the removal of protected evidence and controlled the current accounts connected to the poisoned wine. Julian Cross had knowingly transferred concealed records and misused palace authority, though his cooperation would be considered at a separate hearing. Adrian Vale had acted under a false security claim and an uninformed binding. House Moretti had been connected to the conspiracy 18 years earlier, but individual responsibility for that first betrayal required further verification. Isabella pressed her seal into the ledger, confirming that the process had been complete. The courtkeeper faced the assembled houses. Formal charges are entered against Lord Alessandro Moretti for conspiracy against the crown, obstruction of protected inquiry, unlawful use of household authority, and concealment of royal evidence. House Moretti's voting power is suspended, pendings is revoked. The succession hearing is cancelled. No one protested. Then Isabella formed Evelyn's sign and pointed to Camila. The keeper opened the final record. Evelyn Hayes is formally recognized as the person who protected Queen Isabella, preserved evidence of the first conspiracy, and prevented the destruction of royal testimony. Camila's breath caught. 18 years of silence ended in one lawful sentence. Matteo looked at her across the silver-lit platform. Your mother's name will be restored in every palace record. The poison had been identified. The missing list had been recovered. The current chain of command had been verified. The old conspiracy was no longer buried, even if one final page of responsibility still remained to be confirmed before dawn. At 3:12 in the morning, the retrieval team returned with a sealed cardboard box and a recording of every mile traveled, every room entered, and every page collected. The courtkeeper verified the signatures before opening it. Inside were Evelyn Hayes' smoke-damaged notebooks, their margins crowded with restoration codes, trust numbers, dates, and fragments of royal symbols Camila had once believed were meaningless. One page contained 3 account codes beside Alessandro Moretti's initials and the title Acting Financial Officer. Evelyn had also copied the date of an authorization involving the palace wine inventory and the museum transfer schedule. The notebook did not prove the old conspiracy by itself. It showed the court where to look. The royal archivist compared Evelyn's notes with preserved appointment records, historical bank ledgers, and authorization samples from 18 years earlier. The account codes matched 2 trusts controlled by Alessandro before he became head of House Moretti. His recorded cipher approved access to the restoration schedule, and his signature appeared beside the order that changed the royal wine inventory. The court keeper entered the findings carefully. There was now sufficient evidence to add formal charges connected to the first conspiracy, but the final judgment would belong to a public trial. Lord Moretti was removed from the council and placed under lawful custody until that trial. Julian Cross remained under supervision for knowingly concealing evidence and misusing palace authority. His cooperation would be considered, but it did not erase his choices. Adrian Vale was not charged with conspiracy. He remained a protected witness and was suspended from royal service while security officials reviewed how false orders and an uninformed binding had been used against him. Serafina Moretti surrendered her claim as royal consort and lost the right to represent her house during the investigation. No evidence connected her directly to the poison, but the court would still determine what she knew about the political coercion and the use of her crest. When the last finding was sealed, Isabella placed her palm against the ancient chair. The golden band around Camila's wrist faded. One by one, the locks inside the palace walls released. The witness rite was complete. Camila stood slowly, her legs unsteady after hours in the carved seat. Matteo approached but stopped several feet away. "You are free to leave," he said. "No oath binds you to this court." Camila looked toward Evelyn's notebooks and the bronze medallion resting beside them. "What happens to my mother's name?" "It is restored," Matteo answered. "The museum file will be reopened as a criminal case, and every false record connected to her will be corrected." Isabella took Camila's hand and tapped 3 times against her palm. The signal no longer meant danger, it meant "I see you." Before Camila left, the courtkeeper issued an emergency restitution order that immediately stopped the foreclosure on her home. A separate legal review with full compensation owed for Evelyn's destroyed career, the false report surrounding her death, and the years her evidence had been concealed. Matteo did not call it a gift. Camila did not accept it as one. 3 weeks later, the review paid the mortgage in full and created a protected fund to preserve Evelyn's papers. During those same weeks, archivists authenticated the original Covenant of Dawn. It was not a new law created overnight. It was an existing agreement whose legal force had been hidden through falsified records. Once restored, it required human representation in disputes involving vampire authority. Camila refused permanent appointment after knowing that world for only one night. She agreed to serve as interim human liaison only if an independent human council selected the future representative. She also required equal witness protection, a ban on memory alteration without informed consent and independent review, and public access to agreements affecting both communities. Matteo accepted every condition. At the first banquet held under the restored covenant, Isabella's chair stood between the throne and the temporary human seat. Evelyn Hayes' name had been carved beneath the rising sun crest. Matteo pulled the empty chair back and looked at Camila. "Will you sit with us?" It was not a command. Camila looked at the hall that had once treated her as invisible. Isabella smiled and tapped 3 fingers against the table. Camila sat by her own choice. Her home was safe. Evelyn's honor was restored. The poison plot was exposed. The missing evidence had returned. The guilty awaited trial. The covenant lived again. Matteo and Camila had not reached a fairy tale ending in a single night. They had reached something stronger, trust earned without force, respect offered without ownership, and a future neither of them had been ordered to accept.